Welcome to People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people. You have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our podcast, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.
A very warm welcome to everyone. We are joined by a very special guest, Council Member Crystal Hudson, who represents the 35th District in Brooklyn. Council Member Hudson sponsored Intro 242A, and this bill would require the Commission on Racial Equity Corps to establish a truth, healing, and reconciliation process in connection with the city's historic involvement in slavery and its present-day legacies. Welcome, Councilmember Hudson. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
Always a pleasure to speak with you as well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So can you please explain the main objectives of Intro 242A and what the Truth, Healing, and Reconciliation process aims to achieve for communities affected by the legacy of slavery in New York City?
Absolutely. Well, firstly, I would say that we know that there are many legacies of slavery. Slavery happened many, many years ago, but we're still feeling the impact with things like mass incarceration, with inequitable education system, with redlining, with all of those types of practices that we still see impacting Black communities, brown communities, communities of color, low-income communities. And so what this bill really aims to do is to reconcile that. It is going to work to identify racist, anti-Black policies that are at the foundation of our city's institutions, and then will present material solutions to address those foundational cracks in our system. And I'll say, I've been on your show before talking about my Black agenda for New York City.
Yes.
This is coming straight out of my Black agenda for New York City. In that agenda, I outlined 6 bold recommendations that our city should address. And so this is one of those recommendations. And so 2.5 years into my time in office now, it's something that I'm really proud that I've been able to bring over the finish line.
Okay, and I have to say that you're a woman of your word. What you say you're going to do, you have been doing. So that's
absolutely. Thank you.
Good to see. You're very welcome. So what role will the Commission on Racial Equity Corps play in this process, and how do you envision their engagement with communities across all 5 boroughs?
Yes, so CORE would be required to hold public proceedings and conduct public engagement activities across all 5 boroughs. And then from that, from those sessions and from the information that's gathered at those sessions, they would then be required to publish and memorialize their findings and the recommendations. And then there was also Council Member Farrah Lewis passed Intro 279A in partnership with my bill 242A. And so my bill sort of starts the process that would create the foundation to then implement 279A, which is specifically about reparations.
Okay.
So I see my bill as really laying the groundwork.
Excellent. And how do you believe the findings and recommendations from CORE will be used to effect real change within government and institutions to address the legacies of slavery?
I think, as I mentioned before, we know that we're still being impacted by discrimination, by racial segregation, mass incarceration, inequitable schools, lack of access to housing opportunities, and certainly to home ownership opportunities. All of these different ways that we know the legacies of slavery have still impact our communities. And so I really see this as an opportunity for government specifically to acknowledge and recognize the harms that it continues to cause on communities through, anti-Black practices, policies, and laws. When you think about even something as small as, just as an example, in our school system, I guess it's actually not a small thing, but the resources available to our students, right? You can go into whiter, more affluent neighborhoods, and you see the type of buildings they have, the type of facilities they have, a fully stocked library, things like that. And then you go into Black or brown or lower income neighborhoods, and our schools look like prisons most of the time. I had a young person, actually, I was talking to in the street one day, and he said to me, a young Black boy, and he said to me, how come you go into some neighborhoods and their schools look like college campuses, and then you come into our neighborhoods and they look like prisons? Wow. That's just one example of, the inequity and also the legacy of slavery, and in the disinvestment that our communities, Black communities specifically, have seen. And then you can trace that into every aspect, right? Housing, job opportunities, wages, healthcare. You think about the Black maternal mortality rates. Black women are dying at far greater rates than anybody else during childbirth, and it's solely because of racism and people's implicit biases, and sometimes they're explicit biases. And so those are the things that we need to be acknowledging, we need to be calling out, and then we need to actually be working proactively to create solutions for and find ways to address those things. Why aren't we holding physicians accountable for the number of Black women that are dying on their watch?
That's a good question, which hopefully we could have not just an answer, but a solution too. So can you elaborate on the 2-year participatory planning process that CORE will undertake? What kinds of public engagement activities are you anticipating?
Yeah, I think that, we'll see something, as I mentioned, across all 5 boroughs. Linda Tagani has been a great partner. We've been having conversations with her throughout the legislative process. So before introduction, after introduction, leading up to the passing of the bills. And then now, of course, we'll continue those conversations now that the bills have passed. So I think we'll definitely see robust engagement, partnerships. We're certainly encouraging CORE to partner with a lot of community-based organizations, civil rights, social justice-oriented organizations who have bases, who have credibility, who can talk about what this might mean for the city, and who can really bring crowds out for these types of events. And so I think it's something that we're really excited to be working with Linda and her team at CORE on. I think it's something that they are taking incredibly seriously. And you don't always get this type of partnership, I would say, from city agencies on legislation. And so it's a really great example of the ways in which we can partner and work very closely together. And it's an exciting opportunity for all of us.
And speaking about partnering, how does Insure 242A align with or complement the efforts of the New York State Community Commission on reparations, and what collaborative steps are being planned, if any?
Yeah, that was something that we took into consideration when we were drafting the bill. We wanted everything to work hand in hand with each other. We wanted it to be, a comprehensive process across the city and state. And so I think, again, this is just sort of helping to lay the foundation. The state process has already begun. And I think we're going to be doing all that we can to make sure that we're sort of working in tandem, building off of their recommendations, the things that they identify, bringing that down to the city level, and making sure that the things that the city has jurisdiction over can be addressed, and that we're leaving the things that the state has jurisdiction over to those folks at the state, but that everything is complementing each other, everything is working together collaboratively and comprehensively. And like I mentioned, even my colleague's bill, Councilmember Lewis, that is sort of the second phase of all of this. So I think it starts at the state level, it continues with my bill, and then through her bill, we'll determine whether or not we can create a system for real redress and reparations.
All right, thank you so much. So what's next? How can the community engage and get more information?
I think certainly reaching out to our office, making sure people are signed up to receive our weekly newsletter. We'll be sharing updates and information on a regular basis as things progress, making sure they follow along and get in touch with the New York City Commission on Racial Equity, or CORE, as we've been talking about, following organizations like the Brooklyn chapter of the NAACP, the Black Institute. There's so many other organizations that we'll be bringing into the fold and into a coalition of partners. And so I think, folks should continue to follow all of those great organizations and look to see what we're doing and how everything progresses. And again, they can follow me on social media at CM Crystal Hudson, or they could send me an email at district35@council.nyc.gov and let me know if you'd like to sign up for our email newsletter.
All right, thank you so much, Councilmember Crystal Hudson, an elected official who keeps her word.
Thank you so much for always having me, Phil. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thank you once again.
Take care.
You too.
This show is a production of IQ Inc. Marketing. If you would like to advertise your product or service on this show to the U.S. and Caribbean markets and through our multicultural publications in New York, please call 866-435-3286 or send an email to info@myiqinc.com.
People, power, and politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's people, power, and politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.